Rajon Rondo retires. I hope you can hear me doing the air quotes. I've got words about that, plus a fun Coach of the Month combination, and Jayson Tatum admits to some lessons learned. It's all right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Thanks to Blockbuster brand, it's holiday season, drop Drew in the mix. And 3 from KP, no we not on the Knicks. Flushing competition like Al on Giannis. Juice and Big Deuce, still Beantown's finest. Banner 18 going up in the rafters. Watch the C's game in Locked On after. Karalis on the breakdown, clutch like a tip from D. White on the breakdown. John on the mic, documenting domination. Matter pen a back bay, it's all C's nation. Rain and J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finish. Locked On Celtics pod, home of the winners. Peace.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. It's right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Your team's the Boston Celtics, and I've got them covered every Monday through Friday, plus bonus podcasts whenever they play on weekends. I'm in the midst of a 20 podcasts in a row stretch. I'm patting myself on the back. I'm going to be careful not to sprain my shoulder when I do that. If you're new to the show, I'm John Karalis. Used to play a long time ago. Now I'm covering the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. Today's show brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You get $20 off your first purchase of last-minute tickets. Today, we'll get into Jayson Tatum's lesson that he admits to learning. The team has admitted to learning after comparing last year to this year. We'll get into the fun Coach of the Month combination, which is, it's an interesting little grouping. And we're going to get into the Rajon Rondo retirement. We're going to do it all with Tom Westerholm. What's up, Tom?
What up?
Not much. How you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Ready? I'm sad to hear that Rajon Rondo retired. It's a tough day that he's out of the league.
Finally, officially made the announcement, which he didn't officially make the announcement. He just told people on a podcast that they said, "Hey, are you retired?" And he's like, yeah. So can we just get this out of the way here? This is my old man yells at cloud segment. Rondo hasn't played a game in 2 years. Why are news outlets going out there? Why is the Celtics official Twitter being like, "Oh, thank you for everything, Rondo"? Like now, what you're waiting for him on a pod? He didn't go and say, he didn't fill out paperwork and go into the league office and be like, "Here's my retirement paper," which, by the way, doesn't exist. There's no official retirement papers, folks, in the NBA. You just stop playing, right? Like Blake Griffin.
And if anybody cares, you tell them on social media.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Like the big players make the big announcements and say, "Hey, this is my official. I'm not coming back." LeBron James will make an official retirement announcement. He'll do a whole press conference. He'll read from a script, but he doesn't file paper. He can come back and play the very next year, like without anything. Just all he has to do is sign a contract.
Yep.
You don't have to unretire. There's no process of retiring and unretiring. You just exist and either have an NBA contract or don't. So Rondo, for 2 years, didn't have an NBA contract and still doesn't. He's 37 years old, and he was asked the question on a podcast, and he's like, "Nah, I'm not coming back. I'm done." And it becomes this official retirement thing, and it's not anti-Rondo. I love Rondo. Before I got a lot of crap for being a big Marcus Smart guy, I got a lot of crap for being a big Rajon Rondo guy. I loved Rondo. So I am all for the reason to share his highlights again. And any day you want to celebrate Rajon Rondo, fine with me. But the media outlets going like, "Oh, Rondo officially retires." What are you doing? Stop embarrassing yourselves. Anyway, that has been Old Man Yells at Cloud. And for those of you who are listening, I actually have a graphic on YouTube that goes along with it's me.
I'm going to try to. Okay, so this is kind of a convoluted point that I'm going to try to thread my way through. I think this is, and I'm going to try to do it without offending anybody who listens to the pod or who might or might not be listening to the podcast. I think this is the place for certain NBA aggregation Twitter accounts. This kind of thing is precisely what they would be good for if they stuck to that, which is somebody's name becomes prominent again, right? Like Rondo's name becomes prominent because he went on a podcast and he talked to all the smoke guys, and he, and he dropped this quote, and it was, tweeted out that this is perfect for them, right? Because then they can go and take all the highlights and put all this stuff together, put together a nice little people don't remember that Rondo was nice back in whatever. And it's like, yeah, he was. And you know what? If I'm scrolling my Twitter feed and that package of Rondo clips comes up, I'm watching the whole thing. I'm engaging with like that. I'm teaching the algorithm. Yeah, man, I want more Rondo content. The problem is when, that engagement, everybody wants a little piece of that engagement pie, right? So then you got all the news outlets coming in and being like, all that, like, oh, wow, Rondo announces his retirement is kind of a thing that we could say without doing libel, it's like, that's really what it boils down to, is just like engagement, and everybody wants it. Everybody wants a little, God, you got any of that engagement?
Oh yeah, I heard you got engagement. I just need just one little bit of engagement. Come on.
Just a little bit. Yeah. We say from our podcast that we're putting on YouTube. And
I mean, look, everybody has to play the game, right? Like that's the SEO game, which I hate. I hate it. If it's good, people should be saying it's good. Like I shouldn't have to rely on, hey, Google. I've made 10 solid points to prove to you that people might want to actually listen to my podcast. Notice none of the points that I'm making is that the podcast is good, because no one cares if my podcast is good. But I am going to put Jayson Tatum's name in the title. That's something that generally I'm going to have to write the whole full Boston Celtics in the title, because that's something you like. The title is going to be 85 characters or so, because it's kind of like right in the wheelhouse of something you like to share. So all of those little
you got to do all the little like confessionals and everything for to kind of receive the favor of our god Google to
And I'm gonna have to say Rajon Rondo. I'm going to put Rajon Rondo in there because
it's got to be
because now that's everybody's. So, but hey, look,
happy retirement to Rajon Rondo.
Like happy retirement. That's that's been going on for 2 years already. So yeah, good for him.
His kid looks pretty good at hooping. I understand why you would want to hang out and watch your kids. That's cool.
Yeah, like you're 37 years old. Like
you made a lot of money playing basketball.
Exactly. Like go watch your kid play basketball, and maybe he can make a ton of money. And then also fun to see the NBA announce Ime Udoka and Joe Mazzulla as coaches of the month in the West and East for the month of March. So very well deserved. Houston on a big run. Celtics, obviously.
Celtics have been on a big run since like October. So
yeah. For all of the craziness about like, this trip and the Atlanta games and everything, still coach of the month, still there. Sorry to the people who are angry and wanted Joe Mazzulla fired after the second loss to the Atlanta Hawks. Not only was he not fired, he was honored for the job that he did over the course of that month. No other comment other than just kind of funny to see that graphic of those two standing next to each other in the not standing next to it, but photographs next to each other. Just a fun little thing to see.
Joe Mazzulla, part of the Ime Udoka coaching tree. I've often said it. And,
yes, that's right. I mean, does he become part of that coaching tree? I guess.
I don't know.
He's originally in
Brad Ime Udoka's coaching tree. Will Hardy.
Will Hardy. Yeah,
it's a pretty good coaching tree so far. Yeah.
I guess like you cut down the Brad Stevens coaching tree. And
what grows out of that?
Like you replanted it and it kind of like there's a hybrid. I don't know. So I guess maybe you could say somebody's going to make that case that he was an assistant under Ime and he did get this job. So him, Will Hardy, who else? Damon Stoudemire,
right?
Becomes part of the coaching tree, in college.
Yep.
So that's going to be something.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot.
Yeah, there was a lot of talent on that bench. A lot of coaching talent on
There
that
was.
bench. Yeah.
There was. So congratulations to those guys. All right. Jayson Tatum said something after the road trip ended in Charlotte that both Tom and I found interesting. The contrast between last year and why this year is so different. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the winning formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go check out Locked On Sports Today. Turn off those national TV networks, those national sports networks that just want to put fake arguments in front of you all day long. Locked On Sports Today is just 24/7 sports talk, real analysis, local experts, the people who know what the hell they're talking about. It's streaming all day, every day on YouTube, and it's there on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right. After the win in Charlotte, the Celtics finished their road trip 4-2. Jayson Tatum was asked about lessons learned and, difference between last year and this year's team. And this is what he said.
I think last year we were so antsy to just get back to the finals that we had a few bad losses in the last, few weeks of the season. We went to 6 games in that first round that, we didn't. We may have took some things for granted, right? And this year we've done a really good job of not skipping steps and respecting every game, every day, just trying to get better. As cliche as that sounds.
I don't know, Tom. I think that's it's not the first time we've heard that sentiment from the Celtics. And I think that is a real big difference between last year's team and this year's team, and why games like against the Atlanta Hawks are few and far between. And they turn around against the Charlotte Hornets, who are a much worse team, and a team that you could probably have beaten half-assing it. And they didn't really half-ass it. They played hard. It seems like there have been very few play down to the competition types of games. Very few of those moments that they struggled with last year. And I don't know, I guess the question is, do you believe Jayson Tatum when he says what he said about last year and what they've turned around to this year?
I do. I think a lot of it, I think when you talk about how success in the NBA, right, it's never linear. I mean, I guess maybe on occasion it is, right? Like maybe there's the occasional superstar here or there whose success genuinely was linear, but most of the time, I mean, it is up, it's down, it's up a little more, it's down, it doesn't follow perfectly. And I think when you look at the 2022 Celtics team that went to the finals, that's a great run. And that's an impressive achievement, that they put together. And it's kind of understandable that team of relatively young guys who had success kind of on their own for the first time, a lot of their success before was Kemba Walker was there. And then before that, you can keep going back. Their success was Gordon, Kyrie, there were other guys there who were around. And this was the first time that they just, as the young core took that team to the finals and they made it. And it's I think a lot of people, myself probably to an extent included, were oh yeah, I mean, they're probably going to get back to the finals again. They're young. They're getting better. And they also thought that. And it's that's kind of understandable because you've never experienced this before. This is your first time getting over that hump. So of course you're young. Of course you think you're going to get there every single time, but that's not how it works. Like all of that effort and all of that hard work and all of that mental energy that it took to get to the finals the first time, it's going to take that again the second time and the third. You've got to keep putting in that same amount of effort, and I think that's why veterans are so are so good, right? Is because they've learned how to put in that level of effort and how to kind of bring that level every night. And I think that's what we're seeing with this year's team is like they made the finals and they realized how much they had to put in. Then last year there were, these lessons were learned and they were hard lessons. And this year those learned lessons are kind of being put into practice. And that's what you're seeing, I think, with this really talented team that, yeah, to your point, I mean, even I don't know how many play down to their level there have even been. It feels like mostly what it's been is like off 3-point shooting nights. Like most of the bad losses is just like, oh, well, I mean, they went, 7 for 42 from the 3-point line, and you're just not going to win that game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I do believe him. I think it's a good point. It's a point, and clearly it's a point well taken by the team because I think they've kind of, they've experienced what happens when you do look too far ahead. They don't want to do that again, and now they're a little older and they can kind of put that all together conceptually, I think.
Yeah, I think from the outside, people do make the mistake of when the Celtics blow a lead or when the Celtics lose a lead, it's that they blow it, right? And in some cases, they certainly blow the lead. Like the 30 points they were up in the first game against Atlanta, they just casual, whatever, they blew it, right? But what you don't take into account a lot of times, especially like fourth quarter, you're up 18, and there is the element of, well, they slow the game down and sometimes they slow the game too much. There's also the element of, has the other team been shooting below their standard? And is there a correction coming?
Yes.
Right? Like people don't take into account what the other team is capable of doing. And all too often it's just, oh, this didn't go well. Boston was bad and they did bad things, and that allowed the other team to do. But in the meantime, the Celtics had been doing bad things throughout the game, but getting away with them because the Celtics were making shots. If you combine the Celtics missing some of the shots because their 50% 3-point shooting is overperforming, and there's going to be, they shoot what they shoot for a reason. Like they're in the 40% range for a reason. You're going to miss a few in a row. It's going to happen most nights. And if that happens at the same time the other team starts hitting a couple in a row, well, all of a sudden those leads fall apart very fast. So there is something to be said. Like we do have to take into account that other NBA teams have something to say, right? I'm not excusing the Celtics for, like, when you have a big lead, you'd like to think like, okay, you got to keep that lead, but it's not always going to be that way. Sometimes it's going to be like you miss a couple of shots, the other team makes a couple of shots, and it happens. And if those are threes, your 18-point lead goes down to 12, and a couple of fluky things, and it's a single-digit game. And you're like, oh crap, here we go. So.
Right. I mean, and I think if you're a Celtics fan and that's the way you end up thinking about it, think of it in reverse, right? If the Celtics were down 20 and they rallied back, did the other team blow it, or did the Celtics have some hand in that? It's
that's
like
right. That's
the
right.
same is true in the other way too. There's a lot of NBA players.
That's right. Yeah, and it's like, right. So if the Celtics were down 20 and they came back and they win, how are you looking at it? And that's a good way to put it. Xavier Tillman actually had a good way to kind of like explain what Jayson Tatum was saying in that quote that I played, and how it affects the team kind of mentally and the mistakes that you can make. I had a conversation with him recently. I'll explain you. I'll read to you what Xavier Tillman said, and then kind of how that plays into what Jayson Tatum was talking about in just a second. Today's show is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV. It's your destination for sports, live games, highlights, in-depth analysis. It offers amazing viewing experiences with their smart TVs. And if you already have a TV and you don't need to go get one, just go get the Amazon Fire TV stick, plug it into your existing TV, and now you get access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. So whatever sports you're watching, MLB, the NCAA tournament, you want to have a Fire TV. And they've recently created Fire TV channels to deliver you a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes us here at the Locked On Podcast Network. So go plug in that Fire TV stick or get to that Fire TV channels. You'll see this smiling face on your Fire TV. So that should be a reason to buy it. That's a selling point. So go check it out. Whatever you want to get into, all the major sports, not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos, which I love. So go check out Fire TV channels and the Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Learn more at amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. You see it on the bottom of your screen here on the YouTube page, amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Recording this show before the night in the NBA, Joel Embiid expected to make his return. I'll be talking about that on the Locked On NBA podcast with Jake Madison. So make sure after you're done listening to this show, go check out that show to get my take on Joel Embiid and a lot more in the NBA. So check that out wherever you get your podcast, wherever you got this one. All right, let's get back into this conversation here with Tom Westerholm. And I talked to Xavier Tillman recently at a practice. We talked about the difference in mentality, and he talked about the staying on the day-to-day and not worrying about the big picture necessarily, which is what Tatum was talking about. You're not skipping steps. They were too focused on the big picture. And what Xavier Tillman said was, if you're only out here thinking about getting a championship and you're making bad plays, it's doubling down on you like, man, we're never going to get there if I'm making bad plays. And then obviously that can impact how you play versus just staying present in the moment and understanding that, okay, bad plays happen, but like how fast can you get off that in your head and just stay present? And it's going to help you when you're in the playoffs, teams going to run and we don't let our minds travel. You just really stay present. I thought that was a great way to put it. Because if you're out there screwing up and you're like, oh my God, I can't win a championship if I'm going to be screwing up, and that really messes with people's heads. The game is so mental that if you're not careful, you can psych yourself out.
Yeah.
If you stay present, you'd be like, all right, turnover, next. Like you worry about the turnovers that you had at the end of the game. If you turn the ball over in a moment, you're like, then the very next thing in your mind should be, get back and defend. And then if you can get a stop, then you're like, okay, let's go and let's score. And you better be forgetting about your turnover. Because if you're worried about your turnover, guess what you're going to do? You're going to turn the ball over again. Because now you're not thinking about what's in front of you, who's cutting, because you might have a great play right in front of you, somebody making a cut or somebody's getting ahead on a fast break. And you're so worried about the turnover that you're looking down and you're not looking up. So the staying present and the way
you're telegraphing your pass because you really, really want to make sure it gets there.
Here you go, Jayson Tatum. Oh man, how did they know that was
coming?
How did
they see that coming?
Damn. But yeah, that kind of stuff is all part of it. So
yeah,
the staying present, and this is a coaching thing. All of this is a coaching thing and a leadership thing from the guys in the locker room. And I'm when I talk about why I'm so confident in this team. Last year's team, I think that whole unfinished business thing didn't do them any favors.
Yeah.
It's a great tagline for us. It's a great for the fans to say, yeah, unfinished business. That's right. We're going to go take care of that unfinished business. But for the team, it's like you're talking about unfinished business all the time. And it's like, well, yeah, you actually have unfinished business right in front of you because you got to go beat the Grizzlies and you're not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a remarkably insightful quote from somebody who doesn't have the same level of playoff experience as the rest of his teammates. Like that's interesting to hear him say that. I think that's honestly, I don't even have that much to add to it. I think that's really well put. Like that, and I think, you know, one of the things that I've really liked about Jaylen Brown's mentality this year and last year, he was saying this stuff last year too, was like no skipping steps, no skipping steps. He's been saying that for 12 months more, maybe. Like he's been saying that for a long time. And that it's been interesting to me to hear some of the other guys on the team this year start to say no skipping steps too. I don't know if you know, if they heard him, if that's just something that, you know, everybody's kind of internalized, but yeah, there are so many things that come before winning a championship, and you have to do all those things too. And it's great if your end goal is winning a title. That's, of course it is. Like if you have the talent to do that, that should be your end goal, of course, no question. But like, you know, like big steps won't get you anywhere. You have to take all the small ones. Every, you know, to steal Tatum's quote, every Monday night in Charlotte, like you got to be there for that, because those are hard too. Like, you know, I mean, like Charlotte doesn't have a good basketball team, but they definitely have good basketball players, and you got to go try to beat them on any given night. It's one of the greatest challenges in the NBA.
And it's not going to go perfectly. And this is what fans have to understand. It's not going to go perfectly. And it's well within human nature to have those moments and be like, the first game in Atlanta where you're up 30, and you're not just up 30. It's going so easily. It's just so easy because they didn't look like, I tweeted it out. Like this is a combination of the Celtics playing really well and the Hawks were playing as horribly as possible.
Yeah.
You're like, man, there's no wonder that Scal and a lot of people were kind of clowning the Hawks at that point, because it didn't look like the Hawks cared to be there at all.
Who clowns the Hawks? Who does that?
No, you'd have to be a complete moron to make fun of the Atlanta Hawks, especially Trae Young,
Trae Young.
I mean, yeah, you're telling on yourself if you're doing that.
Right.
So they looked so bad, but the hardest part, really honestly, the hardest part for a team in Boston's situation in that particular spot is to think that your awesomeness isn't like that's enough. Like that's what you're thinking. It's hard to like stay humble in that moment. You're like, we can do anything. You literally, at that point, it felt like they could start playing football and hiking the ball to each other and like pretending to play and still score. Like they were going full Harlem Globetrotters. And it's hard to remember sometimes that the other NBA team has just as much time as you had to build. Like you had that lead in the first half. They got a lot of time to do the same thing to you. It doesn't, and you don't know like that quick change when that can happen. And so, yeah, you're going to slip every once in a while. And it's a reminder every once in a while that, we screwed up. We let up and we screwed up, and it's sorry. In our minds outside, it's like, you screwed up, you sons of a bitch. And they're like, yeah, we get it. And then they went out and took care of a lot of those issues in New Orleans and took care of a lot of those issues in Charlotte. And then you get a little bit broader perspective. You're like, okay, it wasn't so bad. So that's a thing. But to Tatum's point, I think they are. I think they are in the right mindset. I happen to believe what I see because the Celtics record tells me that that's the case. They're going to win their 60th game at some point here. They're going to clinch the NBA's overall record, and they're clinching the conference and clinching the overall seed at a point where like other teams haven't even clinched their exact playoff spot yet, and they're good. So I don't know. All of this is to say that I believe what they're selling. I believe what the Celtics are saying, and there's going to be a lot of people here who don't, and they're like, you got to prove it to me. And that's it. There's nothing that's going to change until the Celtics. You can't win until you win. But I think that they are going to win.
Well, and it's interesting, right? Because even if they don't, I kind of think, like, let's say the Celtics don't win the title this year,
Yeah.
right? I think it still can absolutely be true that they had the right mindset all year. It's not having the right mind. Like, this team is really good, right? They're
Yeah.
really good players, and I think probably the best team in the NBA. It's either them or Denver, and I think pretty much everybody would agree with that at this stage. Like, let's say they get bounced in the Eastern Conference Finals. Does that negate all of the good mentality that they brought to
Yes.
this season? I
Yes.
don't. I mean,
Yes.
a lot of people will say yes. I don't know that I agree. I think that what we've seen this year is so different than what we saw last year. Last year, there were just you could just feel it sometimes that okay, they're about to let go of the rope. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, this team has 4 starters out. The Celtics are absolutely. They're either going to lose this game or it's going to come down to the final possession.
Yeah.
And you knew that. Like, this year's team, so that's been so rare. I think there's the Lakers game, and now we've got the Hawks games, which happened right after they clinched the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Like, there just haven't been nearly as many of those moments this season as there were last year. So yeah, I think it's it's a little bit like, well, you got to trust the process over the results. It's a little bit of that, but I kind of think that you do. Like, this year's team has had the right mentality. I think it's shown up in the results, certainly. And I if it doesn't show up in the results in the postseason, I hope people won't then immediately start writing off this team as like, oh, they entitled this, what about that? It's like, I don't know. They've been great this regular season. They've been an awesome basketball team.
Yeah. I think the bottom line, my last word is it always just depends on how it happens.
Yeah.
Like,
right. For sure.
if they lose in the Eastern Conference Finals because let's just say it's the Milwaukee Bucks and the Bucks just play a great series and Giannis goes off and Dame recaptures himself and he hits like a bunch of clutch shot. Like, if the Celtics go out there and play well and get beat, then they get beat. Like, that's what sports is. But if the Celtics go out there and lead by 20 heading into the fourth quarter, and then all of a sudden it's a Dame buzzer beater, and that happens a couple of times, and then you start to get into like, all right, yes, the other team has the capacity to come back, but don't you have the capacity to score baskets at all on your own? You're just going to go out and get outscored by 20 in the fourth quarter all the time? Are you going to go out there and grind the ball to a halt and have Tatum take every shot in the fourth quarter? If that's going to be the case, and it's going to be some of the familiar things, then we have some issues, and that's what people hang their hats on. That's fair. Yeah. So, but I happen to believe that that's going to be different this year. So, and
it sure seems that way. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see. In the meantime, Celtics OKC, that's going to be a fun game, which I think the Celtics are going to play to their full capacity. Jaylen Brown is questionable. He might play. So no other regulars. Jaden Springer's on the injury report, but I think that's going to be a good one. And if the Celtics can beat the Thunder, then, they've split with every team out west except for Denver, and they clinched. They'll clinch the overall seed if they beat the Thunder. So that's gonna be a good game. So hopefully it's gonna be a good post game pod. So Tom, appreciate having you on as always.
Appreciate you, man.
And I appreciate having all of you here. Again, I will be at the Garden. I will be there for the post game pod. So hopefully no fire alarms go off there when I'm trying to record. So hopefully it's after a win and we can enjoy that game and enjoy just a fun kind of easy coasting to the end of the regular season. So subscribe wherever you get your podcast, watch the show on YouTube, get into the comment section. Let me know what you think. Am I right? Am I wrong? Do you agree? Do you disagree? And I would love it if you share the podcast. Tell everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.